If there is only one thing you need to learn and understand about Magna Carta 1215, it's this. Magna Carta 1215 is the sole peaceful means known to humankind by which the rights of the weakest, most innocent citizens can prevail over a massive, potentially corrupt, and oppressive state power. This is the voice of freedom, Magna Carta 1215 Learning Centre. Welcome to your next lesson with hosts Fitzroy and Carl.
Got to hit that button before you can hear me. Hello, folks. How you going? Hope your day's going well. Hope your weekend went better and life, the universe, and everything treats you fine. I've got a lot of really interesting stuff coming up in tonight's Magna Carta Learning Centre episode, lesson number 23. Hello to everybody who's already joined us. Steve, yes, very keen on the details you want to tell me, mate. Just email me. In fact, I'd be even keener if you could hook me up with an interview with him. I'd be keen on that. Sound check going all right, everybody? Testing 1, 2. Who's Facebook? The rest of your freedom movement, the leaders of anti-lockdowns, anti-vaccine mandates responded to the Tories being brainwashed, basically claiming fraud. Yeah, right. That's a bit big to post. Whoever posted that up, that's great. And hi, Michelle. G'day, Ben. G'day, Daniel. The Larrikins are in the house. Greeting galactic larrikin brethren. And, of course, they send their best to all trendsetters in the room. Should welcome along the man that we're all here to listen to, of course. Evening to my very good friend, Fitzroy Sterling. How are you, buddy?
Evening, Carl. Good evening, everyone. Yes, as always, actually, we're not too bad this week. We're actually just slightly behind time, so that's an improvement. So
yes,
I'm really excited.
I'm sorry, I had someone knock on the door just as we were about to go live, so I needed to deal with that. My apologies for that. So, and look, we're back on None 2K this week. Or yeah, did I put us? Yes, we are on None 2K. We've been taken down from there for the last 6 days. If you were or are watching us on None 2K and you're wondering what the hell happened to episode number 22, go to YouTube and look up Voice of Freedom, and you will find it there. Or you can go to Rumble and the Ozeye channel, O-Z-E-Y-E. That's capital O and a capital E for the Oz and the I part. And you'll find it there. In fact, you can just search Voice of Freedom and you'll find everything that we've put up there. And thank you to everybody who's been over there and checked out the Rumble site. Clearly, YouTube are doing what they're doing. And I'm not sure that we're going to have an audience or a channel left, Fitz. So everything that happens with the Magna Carta Learning Centre might have to move to YouTube as well. We'll just see what happens. I do have a couple of spares up my sleeve, so we will have channels around, but desperately trying not to get ourselves kicked off permanently. They've already taken one channel down permanently, so hopefully, Fitz, we're not going to say anything too bad this week that's going to upset them, are we?
Well, here's the thing that I've actually heard being said, and I've been surprised why none of our actual shows have been knocked out. And what I'm starting to
no, they have. We've had at least 2. I've got strikes for at least 2. They haven't been banned, or I've been warned, but and 2 of them I've had appeals. I'm not sure if they were Magna Carta ones though. I've had two appeals, and they've actually come back positive. So where I've won the appeal and they've reinstated the content. I've found that the big difference comes if you are trying to monetize something they don't like you saying. So there is a John Wilson interview that is still up on my None 2K. Well, it might be off None 2K. I might have taken it down out of caution. But it's still available on Voice of Freedom and Voice of Freedom and a couple of others. Now, that's not been monetized in any way, shape or form, and they've left it alone. Yet the other one that we had to move to Rumble was monetized, and they gave us a bit of a kick for that too. So they're going back and looking at stuff historically. So who knows what they're going to come back and find, Fitz. So the AI was only looking for keywords initially. Now they've probably got a human doing it.
I just you mentioned something really important. That was John Wilson. He's someone I'd love to get on this show because the principles by which he speaks about are exactly the same ones that we speak about here. So it'd be wonderful if we could organise that. I'd love that.
Yes, I can organise that. In fact, John is very keen to chat, and we've had a couple of conversations about bringing the two of you together. He's happy to share the message everywhere, and I've said to him that I think he's watched a couple of Magna Carta lessons, I believe, and he's right behind what we're doing. So, yes, I will arrange that. Maybe next lesson, next Monday night, I'll see if I can arrange for John to come and join us then, and maybe try and keep him in train so we can keep him on the YouTube channel for a bit. Getting kicked off.
I have to say, he's quite enjoying to listen to when he really fires up. That's
my word, he is. Yeah. My word, he is. He's a very, very good man, and he has someone. I'm not sure if it's part of the group that he spoke of or just part of his general group of friends. I had a very interesting conversation with this man who claims that through a set of circumstances, he served papers on the Queen in 2014 regarding her dereliction of duty, a whole heap of other bits and pieces. He puts forward an argument that at some point the corporation is going to go down and he will wind up essentially with the keys to the country. So I've got to admit there's parts of his argument that I do understand, parts of it that I don't. That's why my explanation of it here has been so poor. But I might try and get him on for a chat one night too, and we'll see where that leads. I'm not really sure that anything done in 2014 is going to help now, given that the Queen hasn't really been in power since the 23rd of March 2001. So whatever you did in 2014, I'm not sure it makes a difference. But yeah, g'day, Chew. Thank you, mate. Appreciate it. Very nice of you to throw $5 into the super chat. Every little bit helps. I don't know if you saw earlier today, Fitz, but people just on Nun2K would have seen a little video I put out earlier this afternoon. But now that we've got all the channels on board, I'll get a little bit of housekeeping out of the way if I can before we start. It's been suggested to me that a lot of people have questions of me, to me, and Cherie gets asked a lot about me. So she has said she wants to come on the show and ask me the questions that the people ask her to ask me. Does that make sense, Fitz?
Oh, yeah. So it should be like the voice or the mouthpiece for the people.
She that's a good way of putting it, yes. So she has a number of questions already lined up, but if anybody has a question for me or for the Voice of Freedom, the Galactic Larrikins don't know it yet because they don't pick up their phone when I ring, but they're going to be involved in that too. And I think we'll do it on Friday night if they are available for the Friday night free-for-all. Give me a couple of thumbs up, Galactic Larrikins in the chat if that's the case. And we'll have them on too. Because some of the things she wants to chat about involves them. So I don't know. They've either been very naughty boys or I don't know. She's got something serious to talk about. So Cherie has questions. I think that's what I'm going to call Friday Night's Free for All. Cherie has questions. But if you have questions, then by all means, please send them to Cherie, SHEREE, at VOFHQ.com and get them in before Friday. In fact, get them in before Thursday, I think would be a fair bet because I know Cherie has other business to attend to. So maybe get your questions in before Thursday and she can prepare her list and she can throw them at me Friday night. It'll be interesting to see what happens and at the Galactic Larrikins. So let's see what happens from there. Anyway, Fitz, enough about housekeeping and other bits and pieces. Great to see everybody back in the show again tonight. Let's get on with lesson 23.
Let's do it.
All right, let's get.
Carl, I think you took yourself right out of the actual show.
Yeah. There you go. I hit the wrong friggin' button. All right, there we go. Let's get into the first slide. Oh, there you go. Don't you love that? It goes straight to a video, and I've got to go back to another screen. Really difficult here.
So what we were finding that I've put in a lot of quotes from this particular man. So we're finally going to get to see him, and Lark and Rose, I believe.
Oh, right.
LROs.
Okay. Yeah.
So we're finally going to get to see him in action. The recording's a bit low, so you might have to turn it up. But it's really going to explain codified law and the immorality of it really, really well. So I'm hoping if you've been paying attention to the lessons up to date, you would have heard me talk about codified law, how that's the immoral man's way of concealing the crimes that they're intending to commit. Because anything about codified law is always about something that's premeditated. And anything, generally when you're premeditating something, that means you're up to something. So he really explains it really well. So this is a great one to launch off into the purpose of what we're doing tonight.
Here we go.
Hello, my name is Larkin Rose, and like a lot of people these days, I'm fairly strapped for cash, but I think I've come up with a solution. I'm allowed to rob you. Having to earn money is just too inconvenient, so I just gave myself permission to rob you. So I'll be by your house around, let's say, noon tomorrow to see what your stuff I want to take. Now, this isn't just a threat. I'm not just saying I'm going to rob you. I, by writing this down, gave myself the moral right to rob you. So maybe I should have done it like this. I hereby grant to myself the absolute moral right to steal your stuff. So since I just gave myself the moral right to take your stuff, I'm sure when I show up, you'll give me a warm welcome. And in case you think I can't give to myself the right to rob you, some friends of mine helped me out with this one. They signed this one. So it isn't just me now. A lot of people have given me the right to rob you. And in case you weren't impressed with these sort of simple printouts, my friends and I had a very formal meeting and put together this somewhat verbose but very official-looking document. You can read all the details if you really want, but the long and short of it is, now I'm allowed to rob you. So this document makes it all legit. I now have moral permission to rob you. And since I'm sure you're a fine, upstanding citizen, I'm sure you're going to cooperate when I show up tomorrow. So if you could have your valuables all laid out by noon tomorrow so I can see which of your stuff I want to take, that would be good. And then we can... What? Why are you giving me that look? Yeah, surely you don't doubt that this gives me the right to rob you. Surely you're not questioning the legitimacy of this document. Surely you wouldn't still claim that I don't have the right to rob you. I do. See, it says so right there. What, you don't think this is good enough? You don't think that this is binding on you? You don't think that this gives me the right to rob you? Let me show you something. This is a copy of the United States Constitution. And what it says, among other things, is that the Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes. In other words, a long time ago, a bunch of guys got together and wrote down on a piece of paper, we have the right to rob you. Now, they didn't call it robbery, they called it taxation, because it sounds nicer. But it's essentially the same thing. We have the right to take your property from you by force, if necessary, without your consent. Now, they also wrote a whole lot of rules about how the robbers would be appointed and the legislative rituals which would have to precede the robbery and the different kinds of robbery they'd be allowed to do. But in essence, what this piece of the Constitution says is, we have the right to rob you. And did you believe them? When I did it, when I wrote down on paper that I had the right to rob you, you gave me a funny look. When they did it, did you believe them? Did you accept that this gave them moral permission to take your property without your consent? I bet you did. If you're like 99.999% of the population, you have accepted as unquestionable gospel the notion that this piece of paper gave to some mere mortal human beings the moral right to forcibly confiscate wealth from other people and call it taxation. In fact, if you're like 99.999% of the population, you've never even thought about this until right now. The IRS, it's hundreds of offices across the country, it's 100,000 employees, all the properties they've seized, all the bank accounts they've wiped out, all the people they've prosecuted and thrown in prison, all federal taxes, income, estate, employment, excises, all of them, all federal tax collection stems from this scribble of ink on a piece of parchment. This is supposedly the source of the authority for every bit of that. These few words scrawled on a piece of parchment a couple hundred years ago. By writing this, they claim to bestow upon those people calling themselves Congress a right that you don't have and I don't have. The right to take money by force, if necessary, from other people. And I bet that up till now, you have accepted that as unquestionably legitimate. You accepted the notion that this little bit of ink on a piece of parchment written hundreds of years ago actually gave moral permission for certain people to rob millions of other people. And I bet you look down on any who don't believe it. The people who are called tax cheats because they try to not get robbed, even though this piece of parchment says that somebody is allowed to rob them, I bet you think they're despicable criminals. I bet you cheer when those people have their bank accounts wiped out and their houses seized and get thrown in jail because you really believe that this little bit of ink on a piece of parchment from a couple hundred years ago gave the moral right for some people to steal from other people. Wow, they must have had some powerful magic ink that by writing down on a piece of paper, we have the right to rob you, they actually altered morality. They made stealing into a good thing in certain situations. Now, I'm betting that you immediately realized when I showed you this piece of paper that it was bogus, that it was silly for me to claim that a piece of paper could give me the right to rob you. And it doesn't matter if it was done in magic marker. It doesn't matter if I printed it out. It doesn't matter if I did it myself or had other people sign it. Nothing. No ritual, no document, no legislation that I could do, that any number of people could do, could give to me the right to rob you any more than they could give me the right to murder you. But that's not what you were taught in school. You and most of your friends and most of your neighbors were all taught and all believed that this scribble on a piece of parchment gave the moral right to certain people to rob millions of other people. Well, that belief, as widely held as it is more absurd by several degrees than believing that I could give myself the right to rob you with this piece of paper. For starters, at least my piece of paper claims a source for this alleged right to steal. I have the right to rob you because I said so, or because my friend said so. The Constitution doesn't even do that. It says Congress shall have power to lay and collect taxes. Doesn't say where they got it. Second, my scribble on a piece of paper identifies a living, breathing person to whom this right to steal is supposedly being given. Me. The Constitution claims to grant this power to people who weren't even born when the document was written, who weren't born for 200 years after the document was written. Likewise, while my scribble on a piece of paper identifies a living, breathing victim, you, the Constitution pretends to give the right to rob people who wouldn't be born until 200 years after the Constitution was written. That's like me writing, my great-great-grandchildren shall have the right to rob your great-great-grandchildren. In fact, it's worse than that, because there are no time limits in the Constitution. In short, what this scribble of ink on parchment alleges is that the people calling themselves Congress will, until the end of time, have the moral right to forcibly confiscate wealth from people without their consent. Let me put this as bluntly as I can. If you believe that this piece of paper gave me the moral right to rob you, you're out of your mind. If you believe that this piece of paper gave to Congress the moral right to rob you, you're certainly not alone, but you're still out of your mind. It's time to get back in your mind and start rethinking some of the absolute bunk that you've been taught all your life.
Wow. Wow.
So, yeah, what I wanted to say is I'm noticing a few people in the comments, their comments are really channeled on taxation and IRS. And I wanted to open the lens up wider. So it's not about that. It's not about one thing. It's about what I've been talking about for a while now. And what he's using the word moral permission or moral right. Well, that's another way of saying moral relativism. So it's showing you how these constitutions are not constitutions. Like, this is evidence. So those people who think the American Constitution is something wonderful, right? It's showing you it's not. Because it's people giving themselves moral authority, right? That they get to write themselves into authority. And you don't even get to know who they are because they call themselves Congress. So it's like if you go to these fake courts, right? They'll say the court's view is this. They use the exact same tactics, guys. So what I'm trying to get you to see is to see wider than what's in front of you. Okay, this is how moral relativism is in place in every aspect of your life. Then you think about how many people during these lockdowns and all these QR codings and mask wearing mandates, et cetera, gave themselves the moral permission to enforce immorality. So it's the same type of thinking. It's so pervasive. This is what I'm trying to draw your attention to, guys. So you need to start zooming out, right? So you not have that narrow vision. This is how it penetrates in every aspect of people's consciousness, and they don't even know it. So people are self-righteous when they start giving themselves moral authority, where they have none. And it starts at that level, of government. When they start doing it, then other people catch on, because when you are traumatized, you re-engage with your trauma. This is how we do it. So they know this. The dark priest class know how to pull the strings. They first traumatize you, and then you're going to perpetuate that trauma, and you're going to do it to others. So, what happened through the whole 2 years is people just acting out their trauma on each other, by claiming moral authority, that they had, moral permission from somewhere. I don't know where it came from, but they just took license upon themselves to just say, no, they know what's right, and they get to be the prosecutor of what's right. So we end up being each other's prison masters, we will just guard the prison for each other. And so once that sets in, that mentality sets in, morality goes out the window. And so the best part is, if you think about all the people who are churchgoers, right, who believe themselves to be moral, they would be totally clueless that they've been doing it acting in opposition to what they believe. But the best part of those types of people, most of them are actually self-righteous. So they actually love to judge others for their wrongness. And because they come from that energy, they couldn't bear the fact that they've been doing the very thing that they're believing others are doing to them. They couldn't bear it. So they're the ones that are going to be the last to be able to see the truth, because they come from that energy where they love to judge from moralistic positions, where they put themselves up on soapboxes, where they're above it, when they're right down below in the trenches. So this is just how well this has been constructed, how it's been weaved into every fabric of people's consciousness. They can't pick it. And so the 1901 is the exact same version of that. It's given permission for certain people who are going to hide behind the word parliament, to give their heirs and successors the right to do these things to us right now, which was signed off in 1901, and that's why we're sucking it now. So this same structure. So I just wanted to bring that to people's attention. So don't look at it as just being about taxation. It's about every aspect of your life. Someone you've never met before gave themselves moral permission, should I say, to actually be your master, just like Larkin explained it.
All right, let's move on. Now, Fitz, I know how long this takes to read because I've already read it once. You've made a couple of changes. which negated me recording the thing like I'd hoped to. However, it does come up pretty well, folks, and Fitz has made a few changes to it, but I will re-record it. And if you want to download this document and you want to hear me read it to you, if you like, then I'll make that available on our website at vof.com.au on the Magna Carta 1215 website. You're going to make me read
So
it all again.
the point of this is to explain the connection between Magna Carta and morality and the difference between immorality. So the whole point is to take people on a bit of a journey so they can see how it's being done and why the whole point of everything that I've put forward all connects in, and why I've shown things that have got to do with sport and etc. And no one could understand how it connected, because the central tenet here is morality. And if you understand morality, what it means, like how many people, I'd love to see what their definition of morality is, right? I'm willing to bet that very few people could actually define it. That's just how far away we are from even knowing what it is we're actually trying to defend. So if you don't know what you're defending, how can you defend it? And that's why people go and do things that are working against their own interests, because they don't even know how to define the things they say they want.
Yeah.
And that's deliberate. Yeah. So that's what the purpose of this one is, to try and give people some definition. So are you ready to do some reading?
I'm ready to do some reading. God. All right. Magna Carta 1215, Article 61. You've got a typo in the first line. Where's that going to leave me for the rest of it, mate? I don't know. Protection and defense of morality. The following is in the service of drilling down deep into that which is most precious and sacred, that is being defended when taking the oath to stand under Article 61 of Magna Carta 1215 in order to initiate the lawful notice process. The system of governance the people agreed to live under during the time of the Saxon kings was one of service to the people, where the highest-ranking public servant in the realm was titled king. The one who carried the title of king could only be elected into that position based on the people trusting in the quality of their character to defend and protect the customs and traditions built around natural justice and morality. In order to cement the people's confidence and trust, the highest public servant in the realm, the king, was required to swear an oath of fealty to defend and uphold the laws of God. The term uphold the laws of God is another way of saying we the people are eternally committed to act in the service of defending and preserving the universal principles of morality as the highest aspiration of our people, and will only agree to a system of governance that holds the enrichment and advancement of life on this planet as its highest aspiration.
So just a bit of I'll just give you a bit of a pause there if you like, Carl, so you can take a breath.
Thank you.
Did you have a question about that, or do you just want me to go into explaining what that means?
No, away you go.
Yeah, so but basically this is about understanding what the true nature of governance is. It's a way by how society or clusters of people in large numbers, which have complex needs when you're getting to big, large numbers, how we can organize ourselves around a principle. And if we don't understand the principle, everything we do after that is going to be a disaster. So that was the true intention of, what the whole system of having a king as a monarch, as the highest public servant was, because they were being in service to the people. So you have to know what service to the people means. Right, so very few people could even define what it means to be in service, right? So these words don't mean anything to most people because they don't have definitions for that. So to actually serve somebody, what does that actually look like, right? So when you go and buy something, when you say I've had good service, how many people can actually articulate what actually is the definition of how they can be confident that they got good service? Very few. They'll just go, I just know, it was just good service. That's all I can say. But they can't actually define it. So we need to start getting people to start thinking about what does it mean to be in service? How can one perform a service? What are the things that are required to experience service, right? And it always comes back to the principles of morality. If you are not standing under those principles, you cannot provide service. And what does morality mean? So this is what this is about. It's about getting people to think about, what does it mean? How can I be clear in my mind as to what that term morality means? And how can these people who claim to be public servants be a public servant if they can't even define it?
Yeah, 100% on the money. All right, continue.
Yes, please.
So what does this mean in the context of a governmental structure where those elected into service of the people are given a grant of authority to make decisions on behalf of we the people? The requirement of clear definition of what acting in the service of people and the authority to make decisions on the behalf of the people was established. To be in service is defined as every decision made by a public servant on behalf of the people must fall within the confines of the universal principles of morality, which are eternal and immutable, therefore can never be extinguished nor negotiated. Now, being that humans are not perfect and will stray from the hard boundary of morality from time to time, a safeguard mechanism needed to be established to ensure there is a way that we, the people, remain in control of the decisions made on our behalf. That safeguard mechanism is trial by jury, which is the ultimate expression of people's inherent right, imprinted in the laws of existence, to self-determination through ruling on the justice of government legislation. That the behaviour of each office holder acting in service to the people, as well as the behaviour of fellow members of the society to which we belong. Therefore, the people govern themselves through their consciences within the structure of trial by jury.
Would you like a break?
I'm happy to keep going, but you cut in. That's probably worth explaining a little bit in there.
Yeah, this is a bit of a long paragraph there, so I just wanted to make sure that we don't run away from it just yet. So basically is how, if you know that you are inherently self-determining, like how does that get expressed in the collective? That's what that's saying. Like if you know intuitively what's okay behavior and what's not, why wouldn't that same intuitive understanding, why could that not be extrapolated out into a large scale structure, right? So how do we, like who's got more knowledge than someone else into how to behave in a way that actually serves life and what way detracts from it, right? No one has more inherent knowledge than that because we're imprinted with the same knowledge. So this is where why we have a conscience. So that actually gives us that guide as to what behavior, fits within the realm of morality, because those things are timeless. Morality doesn't change. People can try and change it with their beliefs and their prejudices and get you to, give yourself moral license, like we spoke about earlier. That's what these constitutions have been used for, or so-called constitutions. Because when you say it's Congress, it gives you the idea there's some authority that's bigger than you as one individual that knows better. That's why they phrase it that way. Because then you can't hone it into any one individual, because an individual can be challenged. But if you make it like it's some authority that's too big you can't find it, it's like up in the cloud somewhere, well, then it can't be challenged. That's why they say the court knows best. This is what the court does. They run that one all the time. So this is about understanding that we inherently have the knowledge we require to actually know how to live in peaceful, harmonious coexistence. We are born with it. We just need to tap into it. And the jury is the place by which that mechanism has been put together, so we can actually make sure that we don't get controlled by the very people we've put to act in our service. That's the point of the jury, as well as making sure that our community members as well, don't step outside of a boundary without there being consequences. So we are constantly self-governing ourselves.
Yes, this is more about making us accountable for the decisions that we make, taking responsibility for our actions. And when we refuse to take responsibility and step up naturally, then a trial by jury mechanism will enforce the community standards, and in some cases do it quite harshly. All right, let's continue. Being that the conscience is the conduit from which the universal principles of morality, a set of spiritual laws built into the fabric of existence, are accessed, trial by jury is the mechanism by which men and women acting in service of the people, that would be the government, fall under the supreme authority of the people. In summary, the level of freedom a society enjoys is directly proportional to the collective's awareness and adherence to the universal principles of morality. Therefore, the true nature of a constitution is that it is an adhesion contract that binds all governments across the Commonwealth by sheer fact that all governments of the Commonwealth are answerable to the highest public servant, the monarch of the English Commonwealth realm, who swears an oath to protect and defend the laws of morality. The adhesion contract enshrines trial by jury as both the supreme legislature and the supreme judiciary, because setting morality as the baseline standard is the only agreeable means by which the people can remain free to practice and improve upon, living in alignment with the universal principles of morality in order to increase the level of freedom each member of society can enjoy.
So we'll just take a break there if you want to take a breath, Carl. So,
Thank you.
because a lot of words there, not too much punctuation. So basically, if you weren't clear on what that means, it's if we try and go into having some way of living cohesively based on our personal prejudices and biases, we're going to be in conflict all the time. So the only place where there's universal agreement is once we tap into our understanding of morality. That's universal. It's not like what the Satanists do, where they give themselves moral permission to make their prejudices, seem like that's a moral thing to do by saying this is the right way to go about it, using that sort of mind trick language. It's actually what we all know in our hearts to be true, that no one needs to educate on us. And when we use that as our standard, then it doesn't preference anybody. What it preferences is the adherence to objective truth, which is that if you don't have that as the highest aspiration, then you've got violence as your highest aspiration. There's no sort of fence to sit on in the middle. So if we want to live peacefully and harmoniously, then we attach to objective truth, that which we can all discover. If we don't, then we're going to have violence. And that's the way we've been running. And that's the whole point of codified law. Codified law, which is what these constitutions do, is to make people believe that someone's personal preferences, biases, prejudices are universal. That's the mind trick that's been underway. And this is what the whole point of, getting people to, this point of understanding morality is at the center of everything, because morality is another word for undeniable truth. That's another word for it.
Absolutely. All right, we continue. So, what is most precious and sacred that is being defended and preserved by taking the oath of allegiance to Article 61 of Magna Carta 1215 in order to initiate the lawful notice process? Morality is neutral. It favours no one individual because it is pure in that actions that align with morality serve the quality of life, all life on this planet, across all species. As knowledge of morality draws our attention to our shared fate with all life on this planet. Therefore, all authority claimed by man can only be legitimate if it stems from the universal principles of morality. The fact that we are alive on this planet means the responsibility to defend and protect the principles of morality is bestowed upon each and every one of us, whether we like it or not. Therefore, it's not up for negotiation. It's up to each and every one of us to accept or refuse the responsibility to defend and protect morality, along with the consequences that come from either choice. So, what are the consequences for choosing to accept or refuse morality? Imagine you're minding your own business, walking down the street, and you hear a distress cry for help. Pause for a moment to deeply reflect on your immediate gut reaction. Your gut reaction is your involuntary response that comes from a deep place of knowing that transcends thought. Your intuitive reaction is your biological alert system that calls your attention to defend and protect that which is most precious and sacred, and not up for negotiation. What you are called to defend is the very fabric of existence each of us is reliant upon for our survival and the quality of life that follows from preserving morality. That is why it's an involuntary response. Your thoughts can't suppress it. However, through persistent trauma-inducing events, it is possible to disassociate from the feelings that arise in such moments.
So I'll just let you pause for a moment, Carl, because you did read a bit there, and just jump in here. So, so people say, you know, there's people out there who don't have a conscience. That's not incorrect. Sorry, that's not correct. That's incorrect. We all have one. We cannot separate from it. We can detach from it by using our ego and letting our ego be the guide, where we just get self-obsessed and we just care about self-indulgence. Yes, but you still have a conscience, because those people who indulge their egos, they have to engage in some really, really perverse behavior in order to keep separating themselves and detaching, so they can keep that separation from their conscience, because the conscience is constantly coming up and spiking them. There's nothing they can do about it. So they have to keep numbing out and finding all kinds of perverse ways to do it. So you'll see, like, a lot of these judges who sit in these courts, they are into some of the most perverse things you can imagine, right? And you would have heard about what John Wilson said about 60% of the police, right? What they get up to. So, you know, this makes you dead inside, but you have to have had some kind of trauma happening in your life quite early in order for you to even be attracted to a position where you assume authority over somebody else, right? And that you have the right to decide for them what's best for them. You would have to have suffered some pretty severe trauma to actually step over your intuitive understanding that all life is interconnected, and you don't get to play God without there being disaster for all of us, right? If you believe that that's your right, that's a sickness that's set in place a very long time ago that hasn't been treated. And then this is who becomes adults, right? These very unwell children turn into these adults, but they never actually grow up internally. They still stay in those distressed states where, because they've got all that self-loathing inside them, the only way they can express it in a way that they can survive is to project their self-loathing out onto others. So in order to hate others, you have to hate yourself. And that's who ends up being in these positions of so-called authority. You know, they've structured it so that it's not a service. It's never been one. That it's going to appeal to these people who hate themselves. And then they become part of this hate cult. And that's who runs the show.
The reason why morality is the only legitimate authority is that it leaves each and every one of us the choice to either take action or refuse to take action, to defend and preserve the quality of lives by acting in the service of preserving the quality of all life. Should we choose to act in the defense of morality, then the quality of life for all improves, as confirmed by the joyful feelings we experience when doing so. Should we choose to refuse to act in the preservation of that which is most sacred and precious, then the quality of life decreases for all, confirmed by the deeply uncomfortable feelings that arise in us beyond our immediate control. The reason for the discomfort is that our internal alert system is letting us know that our actions or inactions are in opposition to the intelligence inherent in creation, which drives us to act in service of peaceful, harmonious coexistence. When refusal to preserve morality becomes a pattern of behavior, then the feelings released start to become excruciatingly unbearable, and we soon find ourselves seeking to numb out from these annihilating feelings by preoccupying ourselves with rituals that create the illusion of control and or develop addictions, compulsions, and tics. At the extreme end, we see personality disorders, hearing voices, and disconnection from feelings altogether, otherwise known as depression.
So just before we go ahead, Carl, I just thought I'd give that a little bit more explanation as well. So you'll hear people saying they've got OCD, you know what I mean, obsessive compulsive disorder. Well, if you were to really dig down deep into that, that's a form of these unbearable feelings that comes from living a life out of alignment with morality. You know, their intuition knows that they've stepped away and they feel out of control. So then they start creating these rituals without even knowing they're doing it as to how they can feel they have some control back in their lives. And depression is another version of it. Bipolar is another version of it. All these medical, what they call mental illnesses, that all comes out of living out of alignment with morality. And if we have a structure that makes sure that we're going to live out of alignment with our innate understanding of morality, well, of course, we're going to have these sicknesses. So we are actually participating in our own violation without being aware of it. Now, if you were to ask the average individual on the street what morality means, they'd have a general idea of it, but they couldn't define it. And if you can't define it, if you don't know how to define morality, how are you going to know how to live by it? And that's the beautiful part here, right? Is that we need to be really clear on what that means. And so until we can get to that space, right, we're all going to have our own internal version of one, and we're going to give ourselves moral permission to actually make ours the right one. And so unless we have a universal understanding of what that is, right, we're always going to be at each other's throats. So this is about people starting to think about what that means.
So each of us has a choice to make when we become aware that the social structure upon which we rely is a contradiction to our shared sense of morality. We can choose to be a bystander because we've adopted a thinking pattern that keeps us paralyzed by fear, triggering the survival story belief system that says life happens in isolation, therefore the highest priority is self-preservation, regardless of the consequences to others. This programmed belief is commonly expressed as, look, it's safer not to get involved, or you've got to look out for number one. Or we can tap into our deep inner intelligence that is calling us to act in the service of advancing and enriching the quality for all life, because we are responding to our intuition, which informs us that our individual safety is inextricably linked to the actions that defend the universal principles of morality. Any action that violates the rights of one violates the rights of all.
So I'll just get you to pause for a moment, Carl. I want to use the example that I hear it a lot about public transport, about, like seeing someone getting attacked on public transport and being surprised that no one gets involved. Well, that's a perfect example of how our society has slipped out of its understanding of, how to live a moral life. Because it's not like the people that are sitting and watching it are going, oh, you know what? This isn't about my safety, and it's about actually what it means to violate another. It means to violate me. So I'm jumping in not only for my safety, I'm jumping in for the safety of all, because that's the principle, by which freedom can exist. Right? People don't have that in their minds. They're not in their consciousness. They're in that isolated space where, it's just better to be looking after me because I can live separate to the rest of life. That's the trick of the mind, that we are separate. Sure. These are all how Satanism creeps into our lives and we don't even know it, right? Because we are not separate. We're all connected. To violate one's integrity is to violate all integrities. And so if we don't jump in, to preserve other people's dignity, well, we're violating our own. Now, I remember you've done some interviews with both, and he always used the one about the 3-year-old girl being assaulted, and you're the neighbor and you're witnessing it and you do nothing. Well, he's saying the same thing. Would you just allow it to happen? What are you going to defend? Are you going to defend your fear of something bad's going to happen to you if you act? Is that your highest priority? Is that the highest thing to ascend into? Is that living a spiritual, clean life? Is that what that is? Because that's what we're called to do every moment of the day. And it's when we choose to ignore that, we become complicit in it. And that's where we take responsibility. And this is what this is about. It's learning how to be honest with yourself and take responsibility for your actions and inactions. And if you stand as a bystander, when you know there's a solution that stands up for morality and you still ignore it, then you are complicit in not only your own suffering, but everyone else's. And there is only one. As much as people might think there's another, but there isn't, because there's only one that's written to acknowledge the universal principles of morality. All the others are not. They're all codified law. That's what these courts do, these fake courts. That's all in the service of someone's prejudice, hidden away, to make it look like it's something that exists in some place that no one can access, that has more intelligence than all of us. That's the mind trick that's been played here. So, but there's only one agreement that actually agrees where we all live under the same principles. And as a society, we don't even know what that principle is. And that's the tragedy of how easily we're actually controlled and dominated. And if we want to actually start living in a way where we are actually going to live free, then we need to understand that principle and fight for it.
Beliefs are only verifiable when they align with objective truth. The moment the choice for personal safety overrides defending the universal principles of morality is made, is the moment belief is divorced from truth and silent consent is given to putting one's life force energy behind increasing suffering on the planet which decreases the level of freedom and harmonious coexistence a society enjoys. In this state, fear becomes the master, and one becomes complicit in their own demise. Life is eternal and cannot be extinguished, yet the life we experience in material form is predestined to expire. So, for life in the physical realm to carry on, the will to propagate must be inherent in each species. The species of man is endowed with holistic intelligence. Therefore, we come pre-stamped with the capacity to understand the universal principles of morality, woven into the very fabric of existence, so that our species can not only propagate, but that our capacity to advance the quality of life for our species remains limitless. When one truly understands the articles of common law that are written into Magna Carta 1215, one understands that Magna Carta 1215 is binding agreement to organize society around the universal principles of morality, and see that it stays that way, so that freedom can prevail as a way of life on this planet.
So I'm hoping that wasn't too wordy for everybody. Most likely it was.
That is very powerful writing, very powerful writing. And I will re-record if people want to get a version of that or want to have a listen back to that. I'll put a bit of music underneath it. I have tried already once, and around about 11 or 12 minutes. Might be for those folks who like to go to bed and go to sleep listening to my voice. This might be the kind of thing you'd want to put on. There is a part 2 that will come as well, Fitz. So
yeah, hopefully next week, everything going well, we'll get into part 2. That gets a lot more deeper to the bone, guys. So if you thought this was tough, next week's going to be really hard. But it needs to be done, because we need to take a good, long, hard look at what we've been given permission to and what we still are, while we use all these other mechanisms and methods that people think that are going to give them remedy, until we understand what morality is and what the contract is that actually binds government to stay in that moral position. Everything we do outside of that is giving permission to the very things we say we're fighting. So that's kind of what the real, impetus was, to really highlight how everything comes down to that understanding of what morality is. But we need to be able to define it first. And so before you can start espousing it to others, you need to know what it means to first, in a way that's going to be universally understood. So it can't just be your version of it. It has to be easy to understand for everyone else.
Yeah, right. All right, on to our next piece. You've got a great, this is a very powerful little video piece.
Yeah, like this just gives you a really quick snapshot of what we've just spoken about, of how far society has sunk, into self-indulgence, and just how immoral we really are. So this one depicts it really well.
You showed me love when I wasn't feeling it. You helped me fight when I was giving in. And you made me laugh when I was losing it. 'Cause you are the reason why I'm still hanging on. 'Cause you are.
So, for example, guys, you have a sign like this, and rarely anyone wants to speak to you. You give out free money, everyone wants to take.
So, very graphic way of portraying how society is at this current point, isn't it?
Yeah, like I like the one at the end where the mother's pointing to her children, look, go grab some money.
Yeah,
that
go
was
and grab money.
Yeah, showing her showing the children what the true values that she wants them to grow up with, and she would be totally oblivious to that. She'll think that she's actually performing a function, a service for her children, without realizing she's teaching them self-indulgence is the highest aspiration. That was the real tragedy part of it, right? But when it was someone needing help from someone else, there's no one there. Just like the incident I talked about with the train. If you're on a train and someone needs help from someone else, no one's there. So it's the same overlap, just different ways to express the same thing.
All right, moving on to our next slide.
So yeah, I just thought I'd give some definition in a way that hasn't been said before. So I'm hoping this will help people understand what common law is. So a lot of people believe they're in these common law groups and et cetera, that it's about living free, but they really don't understand the true nature of what common law is, because they're using codified law, and you can't use codified law if you're in defense of common law, because the two things are in opposition to one another. So if you're happy to read it out, I'll explain it later.
Yep, sure. Common law versus codified law. Common law is the defense of man's unlimited nature as the highest aspiration. Codified law imposes artificial limits on man's unlimited nature.
So that, I think, it just says it all. Like, there's so many people who believe that they're using common law, and you'll see it. They'll be out on the road and they'll get pulled over by the police, and they'll start quoting these acts and statutes and stuff like that. And you're like, well, how are you expressing common law when you're using codified law? Like, they don't even know they're acting in contradiction to what they're saying they're doing. Where common law is just about, making sure the conditions cannot be in existence that make sure we are limited, right? So we're just eliminating those conditions, which is no loss, no harm, no breach of the peace, and no fraud, right? If those conditions are not available, where we're all acting honorably, well, then the rest of it, what happens in our life, is unlimited. That's the true nature of freedom, because freedom is unlimited. As soon as you have someone telling you what you're allowed to do, that is limitation. So you are putting limits on man's unlimited nature. And as soon as you hear the word legal rights, that's codified law. As soon as you hear the word civil rights, codified law. These are the things that.
So where does that put us when it comes to things like? Just trying to think of a reasonable example. All right, speeding fines, speeding laws. So under common law, you should be allowed to do whatever speed you like, that you're safe to drive at. But that doesn't take into account that the other drivers sharing that piece of road may not be as competent or as confident driving at that sort of speed. And that means that you wind up zigzagging through the traffic. One of them zigs when they should have zagged, and you tag them, create a huge accident because you're doing 100 miles an hour or 180 kilometers an hour, and the rest of the traffic's bundling along at 110 or 120. The codified law there says you've placed other people in danger, and I suppose common law says that as well if you wound up in front of a common law trial, wouldn't it?
Yeah, no, you've nailed it. So this is about people being responsible. So if you know that you're responsible, you are going to be held accountable for the actions you take. What do you reckon you're going to? Do you really think you're going to drive like that? Like, I don't know how many people really, because if you live in a system where you trust your fellow man, would your level of awareness be that dim that you wouldn't be aware that that kind of driving could be a source of alarm to somebody else? So we need to start thinking, past the confines of how we know life now. So the way we live life now is that people are so self-invested. They're not capable of actually using their capacity for self-awareness, right? Because that's all been shut off because the structure we live in is all about self-obsession, right? But you've got to start imagining we live in a society where people care about each other. That kind of behavior wouldn't be very common, because you'd know that you'd be made accountable, right, in a way you can't get away from. You can't hide behind legal precedents, none of that, because you're being judged from conscience, right? And most people would be aware that if we do something that's alarming to someone else, right, that's an act of going against your conscience. So we'd have that level of awareness built up inside us because we've been practicing this way of life. So it's a very hard thing to foresee right now because we don't have that in existence. So we've got to sort of jump into the future and imagine, that's an entirely different structure now. And so people have a higher level of awareness about how they are with their environment and how their actions impact their environment. So they're much more highly attuned in that way. And so I'm just going to go out on a limb and say I don't believe that kind of behavior would be that prevalent.
And if it was, the consequences could be quite severe. If, for instance, you were responsible for causing an accident that killed one or more people, and not you, it's my understanding that your CQV trust would be accessed by the court, reparations paid, not that they bring back a person's life, but fees, charges, whatever you want to call it, fines, would be taken immediately out of your trust and handed to the affected families. what else happens, I guess, depends on how you present to a trial by jury and what you say in your statement against the statement of facts that I guess the sheriff will present.
So yes, the other there was actually I saw a video where they held a common law court in WA, and they created their own oaths. So it was quite fascinating. So the people are inherently capable of creating their own way by which they run stuff. So I thought that was really interesting. That got my attention. What I did want to say about trial by jury is it's always about trying to establish whether there was some malicious intent as well. So there had to be some kind of premeditated.
Well, I was running late for work. I had to get there. You know, it was a big day at work. Everything was hanging on me, and I woke up late.
Yeah. So when someone makes that choice, right, that means if they do that, they're putting work as the higher priority than the quality of life of their neighbours. Right. So that's what they're going to be judged for. Right. If they're capable of surpassing the quality of life of their neighbours and just going to what they want and for themselves, well, that's self-indulgence. Right. So that's going to show a certain level of consciousness, you know, that existed in them. So it's not going to work out too good for them. Yeah. So these are the sort of things we've got to start looking at, right? Because every action you have that you take goes far beyond you, right? Nothing happens in isolation. And so that's the consciousness that is going to be alive in the jury. You know, they're going to understand that. And anyone who acts in a place of just me, I, well, that's going to expose itself pretty quickly.
Yes. And you will wind up obviously finding people like that tend to gravitate to public office too. The I, me. And that's why we vote for them, because we couldn't be bothered doing it. Oh, he wants to do it. She wants to do it. Vote for them. That's what's got us into this shit in the first place. But
correct. So this is what gets corrected. No, that's quite all right. I remember Harry's language last week was even more colourful. So you're doing the mind work of that. So that's what it's got us here. But with trial by jury, that kind of behaviour would quite rapidly start to decline because there'd be a consistency of outcomes. You know, so those kind of people who are me, I, they'd be starting to see pretty rapidly it's not going to pay off for them very well, right? So then less and less of them are going to be interested in coming into those positions. And so it's just a gradual way that you'll see a shift between who's getting attracted to positions of actual service versus these ones who are pretending to be in service, and what they're really wishing to do is get what they want for themselves.
Yeah. Polarity, the balance point. I like this slide a lot. Truth versus superstition, law versus legal, morality versus immorality, knowledge versus belief. You could exchange the verses there, really, and just say that truth, law, morality, and knowledge are what humanity should be striving for. We are currently living under superstition, legal oppression, legal corruption, immorality, and a set of beliefs that are not matched by defined knowledge.
Yeah, so it shows the contrast, the polarity between the two states. Obviously, what you said earlier, the blue side, you know, that's the highest aspiration of how we can live free. And until those things are understood and adhered to, we won't have freedom. And unfortunately, we're still on this side. You know, that's the tragic part. But the thing about the legal system actually is it actually is capable of giving expression to the lawful. That's what it has the capacity to do. Just like belief can line up with knowledge. So there is a way that they can blend into each other and actually enhance the other. So that's the beauty of it. So it's not totally fixed on one side. It can bleed over into the other. So it's the understanding of
morality are never going to be fused together.
Correct. Yes. Just like superstition can't be truth, because if it was truth, it couldn't be. It's not superstition. So those two sides always remain separated.
Yeah, absolutely.
So this is just a message that I got sent that I really wanted to share with people, just to watch how people can start getting a shift inside their own consciousness. I really love this message.
Hey, Fitz, I just wanted to say to you that I'm having my own little personal epiphany about some of the stuff you say, as in it's starting to resonate with me a little, the way you talk about being in the service of humanity and the advancement of all life. I mean, I understood the words, but I'm like, man, how do you describe or explain that to others when trying to educate them about Magna Carta. Mate, I hear you, and you've got to try and, interpret Fitz's alienese. It makes it hard. Anyway, it's so layered and connected that it's overwhelmed me at times, like it has us all, mate. But I feel like I'm starting to get a grasp on it. That's great. Pardon me. I think what's really helped is to settle me in, is I've been thinking on why I get bothered by people who charge money for education that can free others from the system. It's always really irked me, and I didn't know why. It's because why would you not be trying to shove the material into as many hands as you physically can? Because what frees you frees others. Why not just empower people? You empower yourselves when you empower others. We know this is a numbers game. Empower you, brethren. Why hinder your brethren with a fee, like the government? Thank you for letting us share that. That's great.
Yeah, look, it also talks about how many people are in this so-called freedom movement, right, that are charging you money. They call themselves warriors at law and all these kind of terms, but they're still charging you money. And somehow the outcomes never seem as good as what they promise. And so this is just a really, really sort of solid thing that's happening in certain people's consciousnesses, where they're really starting to look deeper to be able to see what's really been there and how they've been seduced in the past, but now they're starting to see that is not the same as it used to be. So the relationship with that seduction is changing. And this is what's going to be required if we're going to actually move into that place where we all say we want to live free, is we need to be able to identify when we're being seduced by the quick fix answers, that there's nothing lasting in that. So anything worth doing is not going to come easy, and it's about the self-discipline to stay on task, to stay on point, stay focused, regardless of the temptations. So if you fall for the temptations, you're going to go right back to where you started, and we're all going to go backwards. And so this is about like what it takes to, hold that line. And there are people that are starting to get into that space now. So it's really exciting.
Very much so. All right. So on to our last video for this evening. Do you want to introduce Will?
Oh, well, I could brag about Will for hours. He's someone that I've learnt a ton from. Like, I don't know if I've got the adequate words to describe my gratitude for what I've learnt from Will. And this is obviously the interview you did with Will. There's so much in that. Like I said, I'm just chopping pieces out of it because it all needs to be given a little bit more body because he shoved so much in that hour and a bit that you're not going to get the full meaning of the impact of what he was intending to say. So I'm sort of cutting it down into pieces and then making use of it. And this is just about, he's talking about common law again, but also about how we can start using our power to start getting the that real, what would I call it, the contradictions that most people swallow without realizing it. We can start bringing it to their attention in a gentle way. So we just plant the seed, but then they start doing the work. So he's just sort of mentioning about that.
Roger that. All right, let's get into it. Oh, nearly hit the wrong button. Here we go.
But it's actually acting online as a kind of mind control system. But we need to be countering that. We need to be effective at causing people's lies to be exposed within their own minds, noticing the contradictions so that people see the doublethink. We're pointing out that doublethink in people's minds. That's the key. And until we do that, people are not going to be starting that reflective process. And people might be out there thinking, oh my God, this is going to take us ages. Well, it might do. I don't think it actually would take as long as people think once that really starts to develop. I think we need to be cleverer at this and start re-expressing the constitutional principles in slightly provocative sentences, whether that's in the form of questions or provocative statements. That's my feeling. I think we could use social media much more effectively. So I don't think there's a danger. Once we focus on what common law is, we don't have to get all technical about it. It's really just making sure that the common law mechanisms are understood and are in place, which is trial by jury, understanding that the head of state has that mechanism and must, and by the way, they are required to enact that and to protect the liberties of the people. And if we fire this at the establishment noisily, we've got hundreds and hundreds of people, and hopefully eventually thousands and thousands of people all making these points and asking bloody awkward questions to our establishment. I think it's game over for them. We've just got to be a stronger people and understand and care about our constitution and do it. Yeah.
Right.
So that leads into what we're going to do next, and that is give people a way by which they can actually start getting social proof while they're asking these questions. So that's going to lead into the next thing that I wanted to go into, and that's to give people a script, and all they need to do is call up their local courthouse and ask these questions while they record it on audio file. And then there's a Telegram channel I've started where we can post that on there, and then we can have a collection, a place where people can come and see, like, not just once, not twice, 20, 30, 40 times, the same thing repeated. Imagine everyone that's listening tonight, if they went back tomorrow and they did what I'm about to show you guys, and we all collected evidence and we shoved it on one channel, because what happens is people need knowledge reinforced before they'll accept it and believe it. And when they start seeing the same responses, they'll start seeing, holy moly, this is actually something I need to start looking at. And so this is a way we can use our collective power to actually start helping people see the truth. And so I'm hoping you'll probably pop that slide up and we can go through it.
Just give me 1 second. I'm just this will be that slide.
No, that's the next one. So that's the previous one's got the one about the judiciary in it. So it's like grabbing proof that they're
on the PowerPoint.
No, it's I think it's, let me just see what I think what it's called. It's got the word judiciary at the end. I'm just trying to find it in my files so I can tell you what it's called.
Okay. Just seeing what else I've got in my, and it's not a video file. It's a
it's a PDF. Bringing it up. Oh, I know where I've put it. I've got so many files. I'm trying to remember where I put my stuff.
You want to share it at your end?
If I get it, it's called public service proof judiciary is what I call the file. But let me see if I can share it from my end. Let me just go in here. So settings is where I do the sharing, isn't it?
Down the bottom, if you just go down to the bottom, it'll say present, and if you like beside settings, it'll say present. Click share screen.
Yeah,
and then you can go to window and select the window, and it'll share it straight away.
All right, let me just find the window. I don't think it's going to do it this way.
Oh, you can go to tab or whatever beside it.
Oh, right, yeah. Now I see.
Entire screen, window, or check the tab, and you'll usually find it there.
Oh, it's because my PDF comes up differently. I know what I'll do. I'll actually bring it up as a different file. Let me just cancel that for a moment, and I'll bring it up as just a PNG file, and that should be able to, you should be able to see it that way. All right, so I've just got so many windows open. Let me see if I can do it again.
Sure.
Share screen.
I've just lost everything in the chat, so hope we've still got people.
Oh, joy. Share screen. All right, window. Okay, this should bring it up. Let me know if that's coming through. Is that coming through?
There you go.
So it should say public service proof judiciary.
Sure does.
All right. So this is just about the questions you would ask while you're getting your recording device turned on. So when I've called up courthouses, they usually don't announce themselves. So my suggestion would be to actually say that you're doing a research paper, because then they'll make it less suspicious about those questions, because these are questions that have never been asked before. So if you wanted to be able to get anywhere, I'd actually say, look, I'm just doing a research paper, and so I'm just curious about getting some answers here. But first, obviously, you need to get to know who they are, what their name is. So you'd ask, who am I speaking with? Then the position, because they rarely say what their position is now because they're hiding. The next big question is this a public or private courthouse? They will never say private. I've never had that happen. So when they say public, that's when you jump into the next. This is where it starts getting good. And so that's when you say, this is a public courthouse, does that make you a public servant, right? That's the question they're not going to like to answer. And so whether they hang up or not is irrelevant. It's about you grabbing proof that they aren't public servants, right? If you can get past question 4, you've done amazing, right? So then let's just pretend you did. Then the question 5 says a public servant must swear an oath of office. Now, they would never want to answer that question. That they must be able to recite upon request to hold authority granted them by the people. To the best of your knowledge, is that correct? Good luck getting an answer out of that one, right? But the fact that you're actually saying these things, right, and you got to imagine that now anyone who's watching what you've recorded, right, that's going to start putting some ideas in their minds of things they've never thought about before. So this is not about whether you get them to answer the question or not. This is about who's watching, right? The people are going to watch the proof that you're getting and start thinking in their minds, oh, I've never looked at it like that. So we're going to start waking them up. Not so much these people, because they are criminals. They know that. So you got to look at it from that perspective, right? And let's just imagine that you get past 5. I don't imagine you will. Then you go, can you explain to me how you define the universal principles of morality? Now that's just going to stop the show right there, because they'll be just dumbfounded. They'll have nothing. Because if you're a public servant, you need to know what morality is. Otherwise, how can you be in service of the people? Right? Sure. So you've got them right there. And so these are just ways to start getting the people who are going to watch this, right? So you might have family and friends who don't believe anything you say, right? You're getting the proof for them. You are doing the work. And you, the next person, the person after them, you start getting 50, 100 versions of this from all different parts around Australia. It's going to start becoming pretty overwhelming evidence. And then, this could even be a competition. Who can get furthest down the list before they get hung up on? I'd love to see that.
Exactly. Send us in your recordings, folks.
Yeah. And so number 7, do you agree that a public servant must pledge an oath that binds him or her to make decisions on behalf of the people that fall within the confines of universal morality? I mean, could you imagine them answering that one, right? Because that's the opposite of everything they're doing. And then if you're going to get past that, good luck. But, anything's possible. It's a challenge to the galactic laboratory.
I know you've skipped ahead one, but I can hear the response to the question number 6. Can you explain to me how you define the universal principles of morality? I can hear some people saying, oh, mate, I'm not a Sherlock Holmes fan.
Well, let's just see if that actually happens. It'd be fascinating to know. Number 9, to verify that you are indeed operating under the authority of the people, because if you are going to operate on the authority of people, the only authority that was granted was that to act under morality, right? I require you to recite your oath of public service. There's no chance. They just don't have it, right? So you're just exposing it deeper and deeper. Then the last 2 are pretty extreme. I require you to explain how, so if it's in Victoria, you'd be saying the Magistrates Court of Victoria, listed as a corporation registered for GST with an ABN. So you'd have to do your homework and know what the ABN is and quote that on the Australian Business Registry. And they also listed on Dun & Bradstreet, which is a credit reporting agency for corporations, how that can be something that's acting morally to serve the people, right? They've got to explain that now. You know? So that's never going to happen. And then the last one, can you explain how a judge or magistrate appointed by government can serve as the people's failsafe that keeps government in check, given that the judiciary is appointed by and answerable to and only to Parliament and not the people? So how could that be the people's failsafe when their master is Parliament? And we've gone over that. I've shown you the acts that say that, the Parliament gets to create it. And so what you would do is you would send it to this Telegram channel that I've set up called Social Proof. And that's where we'd find them all, right? We just keep posting them. So it's only going to have things to do with anything that's to do with morality, guys. If you start posting things that are irrelevant to that, to use UCC, equity law, legislation, the legal system, if you start, it's not going to be accepted, guys, because those things grant authority to codified law. What we're working on is the universal principles of morality and morality only, because that's the only place where authority exists. And at the bottom, it's just got a little thing at the bottom there that just talks about Magna Carta. That's the only moral agreement that binds government to act in the service of the people. There's no other one. So then it just points you to the other Telegram channel, the one that we've changed the name to. So I'll just get my thing down. You've got the other one up, don't you, Carl? The one about the freedom fighters?
I do have the freedom fighters one. I can put that up immediately, if not sooner.
So this is just a little thing, a little reminder for people about what it truly means, what they think they're doing versus to what they're actually doing. So it's just a way to really have a little reminder as to what it means to stand under principle, because freedom can only be won and preserved if it's done on principle. If you do anything else, which is a quick fix solution, that's the opposition to principle. So there's a lot of people out there who call themselves freedom fighters, but they keep using legislation, equity law, etc., all the codified stuff, because they believe it's going to give them a faster solution than standing on principle. So then they're actually being seduced by the opposite of what they're wanting. Did you want to read this one out, my friend?
For sure. Let me blow the screen up a bit so I can actually see it. At which point, while you're being forced off the cliff, do you draw the line and finally stand on principle? Not because you expect to win, but because you choose to defend that which is eternal and inextinguishable, upon which the very fabric of existence is built, therefore not up for negotiation. Do you want your last breath spent on submission to fear and comfort, or in defense of the universal principles of morality upon which our shared fate on this planet is dependent? The sooner more people understand that it's the compromise of morality for comfort that's got us to the precipice, the sooner our self-imposed suffering ends.
Yeah, and then it just says here, to act in the service of morality is to bring freedom into reality. It's the only way it can happen. So this is a little reminder for yourself and anyone else who says they're a freedom fighter of what is the requirement. This is not a negotiation. There's only one requirement. And the moral man always stands on principle. The immoral man stands on codified law. Someone else's prejudices and biases. And then just here it says the collective adherence to the universal principles of morality is the unifying force that dissolves fear, neutralizes evil, and cultivates freedom. And then the same thing at the bottom as to what was there before. So now the Telegram channel is called the Knowledge Center. We've changed the name because previously it was called Network Chat, and that gave the idea that this was just about having a free-for-all chat about whatever was on your mind. So come to the idea that maybe we need to change the name to depict what its actual function is, and that is to give the knowledge and support to activate under the universal principles of morality and use that agreement that binds government to those principles.
Very good, very good.
I did just let you know, Carl, I did give you the link to the social proof channel in the private chat. So if you wanted to pop that up in the comments so people can click on it once they do get their evidence and start sending them in. So we're going to build a database, guys. So, we're recruiting everybody. This is how you can stand in your power. This is one little thing. It doesn't take much. It's just a phone call and a recording. Right? We can all do it. There's no effort, no massive effort required here. You're not going to risk anything here, but what you deliver is going to be case evidence of the immorality and of their criminality, because they never got a grant of authority to do anything other than stand under morality. There's no other authority given.
Awesome stuff, Fitz. Awesome stuff. Another great show tonight. I think there's a lot we have to learn about morality. A lot we have to relearn. A lot. I don't think it's going to be a hard job, but I think we have to be on, or willing at least, to get on the path to accepting that what we've got at the moment isn't working. So we need to really look the other way. Just want to let people know that if you are interested in buying a T-shirt, the Magna Carta 1215 Learning Centre Night Reu is available. All you've got to do is go to vofhq.com and go to the shop link and click on there. You'll find shirts in all different sizes and colours and all sorts of ones. I'm particularly liking that one at the moment. So if you're at all interested in giving us a bit of a handout, you can go and check out a Voice of Freedom shirt or a Magna Carta 1215 Learning Center shirt from our website, which is vofhq.com. Go to the shop, and that would be awesome if you're looking for a Christmas present. Isn't that what they say, Fitz?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, was it Hayden that did all the work, if I remember? So
Yes, Hayden.
A lot of time, energy, and effort went into creating this. The colors, you've got a lot of variety here, but I haven't seen that logo before. Is that VOF in a different design that you've come up with another way?
It is. He's got a bit creative. So that sort of VOF, I actually thought, oh, gee, that's a little man. That's representing us trying to climb out of the hole we've dug ourselves.
Yeah, that's what I saw.
That was my initial look at it when I looked at it. I thought, that's exactly what I see.
It's like a head on top of a body.
Yeah, exactly. It looks like a head on top of a body, but it is actually VOF. I thought very cleverly done. But somebody did point out that inverted pyramids are not necessarily great things. It's not an inverted pyramid. It's a V for VOF. However, nobody says you've got to buy it. Nobody says you have to wear it. If you don't like it, obviously nobody will buy it. So there won't be much point in leaving it on the website. That's pretty much how I'm viewing it. So if you have those sorts of objections.
The beautiful part is that it actually blends in with the shirt. There's no hard boundary around it. So it's got that real smooth transition as being part of the shirt.
I really like that color, that one. I like the way that's come up nicely, and I like the black one too. In fact, I like the white. I can't find one I don't like. Hayden has done a magnificent job. And the plan is to get Hayden on to have a little bit of a chat. He has a magnificent service. So if you are interested in logos or you need something created, and I know that folks who've been with us from the start have seen our original night, and they may not see too many changes in the night that's now before you. But this night, Re-You, as Hayden called him, is completely constructed. He is constructed from scratch, and Hayden has done a bloody great job with it. I think he deserves to be congratulated. So, and I can't thank him enough for the support that he's given us, Fitz, and Voice of Freedom in general. So, I know he has some other stuff he's working on with you at the moment, or has been, and there'll be more of that on the way. He's offered to help us out with a couple of other projects too. So if you need somebody to help you with logos, or you want graphics or artwork done, then get in touch and we will hook you up with Hayden. We'll get him on the show at some stage in the near future to have a chat, and he can show you his website. That day, I can tell you it is an amazing website. Go and have a look at some of the digital artwork that he's designed. Is absolutely incredible. But we'll get onto that another night. Fitz, been a pleasure.
Yeah, just a quick question. I saw pop up here. You might have missed the call. It says, why are animals on the shield? Did you want to field that one?
Yes. Okay. The animals on the shield are the totems of the capital city Aboriginal tribes. There are 330 tribes in Australia, or over 330 tribes of First Nations people. They all have a totem, each one of them. Thankfully, a lot of them have the same totems, snakes, crocodiles, turtles, crows, eagles, emus, that kind of thing. So initially, I wanted to get something that was at least representative of our First Nations people and their spirit totems. And the way I see that is that we have our knight representing the European end, if you like, of Magna Carta 1215, which covers our First Nations people as well. And that knight is shrouded in the protection of our First Nations people with his knight there. Now, it'll remain to be seen whether or not that gets accepted. whether or not anybody wants it to buy it, who believes in that kind of thing or doesn't. I'm trying to be a unifying force, not a divisive force in all of this. So my entire goal behind the design of the animals on the shield was to bring us together in a way. And I, spoke with Auntie Glenda, amongst others, got input from various groups. They were the ones who wound up suggesting that we go with the capital cities. So, yes, it's no more than that. It is no more than a way of saying we are united in this way. We might carry, a 12th century broadsword and armor, but we also carry a shield inscribed with the protection spirits of our First Nations people. That's us working together.
The other thing I was going to say is we're united in our shared sense of morality too.
That's true. Yes.
So that brings it all together. It doesn't really matter where you started on what part of the planet. We all have that same sense of morality. It doesn't change.
Yeah.
So it doesn't matter what color your skin is. None of that.
Just 1 second. There is a numpty in the chat called Steve Johnson.
Oh, yes. I've been noticing that.
Yeah, Steve, you can't count to begin with. You might, I don't know what channel you're watching, you turd, but there are a lot more than 19 people watching. The thing's streaming out on 7 channels at the moment. So congratulations. You've got the brains enough to figure out you've got one. Let me go through some of your other stupid, bloody statements tonight. I don't know what show you think we're doing here tonight, Steve, but it's not the one you think. You've come up with a statement about Guru is innocent, but Bosie knows about Nasara is bullshit. Great. You've gone on to some whacked out bloody thing on SG Anon. You know who he is. Round of fucking applause for you. Yip yah. Yes, his name is Michael Hollingsworth. So the what? Is he related to Archbishop Hollingsworth? Is that the next story you want to tell me, Steve? I don't care. That's just not for this show, mate. It's another night. Why don't you send me an email, you lazy shit, instead of sitting here and making a dick of yourself in a chat channel that has nothing to do with anything you're on tap with to talk about tonight yet, tool. So I'm going to give you one more chance, or then I'm just going to kick you, mate. One of the two, because idiots like you are just too stupid, too hard for me to deal with this early in the week. I'm very sorry. So make up your own mind, dipshit. Start smarten up or just disappear, because I'm over you. Sorry, Fitz.
Oh, that's quite all right. So just a bit of amusement to end the show in.
Yeah. In fact, I've had enough. Goodbye, idiot. So I couldn't even bother waiting for a response. People like that take far too long to even write one up. I'm sorry, folks, for people who were suffering through that tool. He may well have some great inside knowledge. It seems like he's got a dick big enough. He needs 2 hands to pull on it before he can say a word about it, though. So that's for somebody else's show, not this one. And that's going to be how I feel about dickheads like that. He's got a mate in here too. Don't worry, I'm going looking for you too, mate. Fitz, we'll have a very, very energetic show 24 next Monday night. It will continue on from this week, and I know what's coming up, folks. Next week's show is going to be a very hard-hitting one, particularly if you're a father and you've been through the system or been put through the system. Maybe that's a better way of talking about that. So, yeah, if you've been or are still in the system with your family, and maybe you're going through a separation or a divorce, then next week's show is one you might want to be watching. It's a pretty big thing next week, I reckon, Fitz. Having, read your first version of it at any rate.
Yeah, look, it's really important that we start understanding what we're giving permission to every time we grant authority to the structure, and why we don't play to win, but why we stand on principle. And until people understand what the true nature of how deep this runs, until it really hits in their heart and they feel it in every fiber of their bones and their being, it's not going to change. So this is a way to hopefully draw people's attention into what it's like to suffer that deeply And so it is not going to be easy, guys. It's going to be a bit difficult.
Fitz, thanks very much. Catch you again next Monday night.
Yep, absolutely looking forward to it. Thank you, everyone who tuned in tonight, and hopefully we can see you back next week.
Awesome. Don't forget, folks, we're going to do a Q&A. If you've got questions, you want answers, maybe that Steve Johnson can write some questions. Don't know that we'll have any answers. I'm not quite sure I live in the same land that he does. But at any rate, Cherie at vofhq.com. If you've got a question, send it to her. We'll endeavour to get it into the Friday free-for-all. We usually don't put a time limit on that show, so God knows how long it could go. We'll make sure we get through as many or all the questions, if at all possible. Thank you to everybody who's been joining the show tonight. Really appreciate you coming and being part of this. And thank you for coming back to None 2K, those of you that have. Those of you that didn't know that None 2K had been taken off, you just thought we'd disappeared for a week and haven't been made aware, there is a Rumble channel now, and Ozeye, O-Z-E-Y-E at Rumble. You will find all our stuff over there. You missed some really interesting shows. In fact, there are a number of shows I would recommend you go and have a look at, including the one with John Wilson. But last Friday night's Friday Free-for-All with Spiros is very much one to go and check out. Speaking of that, people have been asking me to type up the address for Spiros and the class action he's putting together. They've said they missed it or couldn't find it in the show the other night. This is the address. I've just posted it up. It's peopleagainstcorruption.com.au. All he needs you to do is go and register. If you've lost money in this last 3 years because of all the bullshit that's gone on, the mandates you've been made to follow, the businesses you've had to close down, the staff you've had to sack, if you are one of those sacked staff, if you've lost your job, still haven't recovered it, he wants to hear from you. If you have been financially disadvantaged in any way by this, he wants your name on that class action. Now, there are two reasons for that. One, you'll get compensated. Two, you, along with as many people as we can get on that class action, maybe 1 million people or more, are a lot harder to silence. It's easy for the court to silence one man and one man's claim, but it is very difficult to silence the claim of 1 million people who know there's some bad shit going on. So Spiros is very keen, if you have suffered financial disadvantage, to represent you. There is no cost to you. There will be no blowback to you. You will not be able to be sued by anybody. There won't be costs or anything awarded against you. All he needs at this juncture is your name, your email address, and a figure from you. So give it some serious thought. Don't just say, I lost 10 grand, or, I lost 100 grand. Maybe you lost 500 grand. Maybe you lost $1 million. Really think about it and put that figure in the registration form and get it done. Now, those writs will be issued in February of next year, but get your name on it now, sooner rather than later. And I think it will help. Now, I've posted that up in there, peopleagainstcorruption.com.au. Click on that link or copy and paste it. You should be able to find it there. Salty, didn't lose any money but lost a child. Yeah, well, man, I've lost similar. Not a child, thank God, but certainly I've lost some family out of it, which has been, sad. Thank you to everybody who has said kind things. If you do have questions about the future of Voice of Freedom, Friday night we'll give you a good idea of where we're going to go. The Galactic Larrikins will be on. We'll talk about our plans for 2023. And whatever Cherie says, because she's boss, she wants to come on and ask some questions, have no doubt she will get answers. That's what she's like. Did I get a bit carried away with that? Maybe so. All right. Love your work, folks. Be safe if you are going out on the roads, because you know what those bastards are like out there on the roads? None of them. are very good, and you don't want to be one of those dickheads amongst them.
You let one ant stand up to us, then they all might stand up. Those puny little ants outnumber us 100 to 1. And if they ever figure that out, there goes our way of life. It's not about food. It's about keeping those ants in line. That's why we're going back. Does anybody else want to stay? Let's rock!